Welcome to the Inner Truth Seekers podcasts, where we help you discover and embody your own inner truth, not just as a concept, but as a way of life.
We are your hosts. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Michael, and in today's episode, we dive right into that topic of being of service to others, what it actually means, how you can connect to the vibration of being of service to others, how it might transform your life, why it might be important, and why you might choose to have that as a guiding principle in your life. Let's dive in.
So, on the path that we might call awakening or becoming more aware of one's multidimensionality or expanding someone's consciousness, whatever words or phrase we use to describe that, basically when we start becoming aware of there's more than the physical realm, there's something within, there's a bigger consciousness there that's beyond the physical, and we start deciding to look towards that or discover it or have more familiarity with it or spend more time there. And you could call that meditation or contemplation, or maybe it's prayer, maybe it's just acts of service, in whatever way someone kind of stumbles upon that or begins to embody it in their life. It seems that when someone steps into that or makes that transition, it seems that there is a invitation that exists. And when I say this, and I know you know what I'm talking about, Michael, but the invitation there that exists, it's not something that's pushing itself on us. It's something that's there to be recognized or made aware of. And the invitation seems to be to choose. Are you going to live your life or lead your life from a place of love? Are you going to lead your It seems to be that the invitation is to choose. And the choice seems to be, are you going to lead your life and live your life from a place of love or from a place of fear? And you and I know that invitation as an opportunity to polarize, is what we might call it. And I say that, I'm just referencing the Raw Material or the Law of One, which is a 5-book channeled series. And there's so many ways that we could describe this with words. But you and I know this as polarizing in service to others or polarizing in service to self, which might be polarizing in service to love or polarizing in service to fear. I am just curious, when did you first stumble upon this invitation, and how did it resonate or not with you? How did it inform you at that point in time?
Yeah, great intro and great question. Firstly, I want to clarify that the law of one is different to the law of onesies, which is something that's completely different. So
there's no such thing as the law of onesies, guys.
I'm sure someone out there who's wearing a onesie right now might say otherwise. But to answer the question seriously, it was for me, it was clear. And I say the first part and the first point for me, I would say professionally, for me was when I left the company that I was working for and I began my own company, which was a renewable energy recruitment company called Rebalance, which was nearly a decade ago now. And the emphasis of that was rebalancing the society, the economy, and like the people together. And it was the first time for me, as I kind of went through to being in my own sphere, if you will, of my own soul's calling, that I was able to change the way that I did business, and I was able to transform the way that I was showing up in work to have more of a, I would say, positive impact in the world around me. And that started with like the employees that were working with me. Then we would give a certain amount of the money that we would make to charities to help with climate change or things like that. And we basically built the business upon that essence. But for me, I was still kind of in the depths of trauma, very functioning, but still very kind of, through the effects of trauma, depression, anxiety, self-medicating, alcohol, and things like that. It wasn't until I had my spiritual awakening, what you would call, that it was for me that I recognized that what was transforming in the way that I was doing my business and work then was the beginning of me recognizing that call to be more of service to others. And it wasn't long after that that, because I was in that sphere, in that realm of being able to work for myself and create my own brand and be able to work in that way, that it was like putting fertilizer on all the aspects of my soul that were ready to step into service that I didn't really know. And it was that transitioning from being more, I would say, self-centered or self-motivated or like personal goals started to become more of like soul-aligned goals or soul-aligned transformation. That's kind of when I went through my kind of spiritual awakening, traveled around the world, came here, met you. And through all of this type of work that, when I subsequently left that business and decided to take upon a career or life path or dedicate my life to helping people transform through their own personal trauma and have their own awakening to their own true selves, that's just been something that's more and more been at the forefront and a guiding principle of how does this choice and this alignment line up with my soul's choice and polarization to be of service to others. Now, of course, there's so many different ways to be of service to others, and I'm sure we'll dive into that in today's episode. But for me, really, like that point, I would say, as you asked that question, was when I first started working for myself. And I think that was more because the type of organization and kind of industries that I was kind of working in terms of recruitment, like being of service to others was not the, I would say, forefront or guiding principle. It was a byproduct of creating wealth for the individual or for the business. So once I kind of moved out of that sphere, of someone else's sphere, it really just allowed that blossoming of that soul awareness of my own self to be able to take those steps. And then through the process of healing trauma, healing from abuse, also learning, I would say, in spiritual traditions that also don't necessarily align with being of service to others, that are more associated with power or dynamics and things like this that aren't actually purified in that service to others. I've been able to have, I would say, clear reflections of what focusing into service to others means, what it doesn't mean, and then how to navigate and transform any aspects of the being that may be still stuck in trauma or still stuck in separation or still kind of, stuck in the past and past dynamics, and then transform that to the vibration of service to others, which has always been here, which was always there, was just waiting to be recognized with conscious choice. Because, if you look through, and I look through life, and I'm sure that many people who are listening maybe have the same experiences, there are all these other aspects when you can look back to childhood. Like I remember this image always sticks to me, is like, found a £10 note, which is a UK £10, which will probably something like $14, something like that, $13-14. I remember I was working in my nan's shop, like as a kid, just like helping her out, and like she was there, she was looking after me, and I was helping out, and I loved it and enjoyed it. I remember I found £10 on the street, and like the reaction for me as like that innocent child was that I went running around the street saying, "Someone's lost £10." And like my nan and the workers, I was like, "Get in the shop. Someone's just going to like, so innocent to the fact that someone didn't even occur to me that someone could be like self-serving or service to self and wouldn't have lost that £10, and that they would have, maybe manipulated or taken it from a small child. It wasn't on my radar that existed. So the reason I bring that up is that I think that when we incarnate on the planet, if we have that kind of soul inclination to be of service on the planet, it's already there, it's present, like we're born with it, so like innocent, so powerful, so potent that we see and we recognize each other as one, like experientially feel that interconnectedness before the kind of veil of illusion and amnesia kind of gets thicker and heavier, and we kind of go through the inevitable experiences of being a human on Earth and the associated traumas and experiences that make us feel separate. We kind of bring our defenses up. So, there's just kind of two examples of like in my own life where I can look back and go, oh, that was something that was just didn't even think about I could have that £10. And then also kind of, gone through more of the trauma, and then the kind of stepping back into, my own truth through the first kind of business that I did. And then, that kind of arc and trajectory, which has brought us here to today at Sitting at Inner Truth Seekers.
Nice. I didn't know some of those things about you. Thanks for telling me.
There we go.
Yeah. I think about when you're saying that, it makes me think of, I think it was about 2012, somewhere between 2010 and 2012, I was just starting to have like an actual awareness of my intuitive abilities, and them being online, and my interconnectedness with things, and receiving intuitive guidance for myself and others. And at that time, I think you and I are a lot alike with this, and any of you listening might be too. If someone gives me a list of things to do, I can do them. I don't hesitate. I'm like, what? There's a checklist? Okay, fine. Let's get that checklist, marked off and be done with it and on to the next task. So I'm definitely a doer. And at that time, I was starting to have awareness between 2010 and 2012 in my own prayer. I was starting to have awareness that I was receiving guidance, and I was starting to journal and take notes and actually take it seriously and not sort of avoid it or get weird about it or bypass it. I was like, this is happening. I'm engaging it. And when I would take notes and stuff, there was this one, I will call it guide at the time, that was just constantly giving me things to do. You need to go do this. You should go do this. You should go do this. And then don't forget to do this. And then also, it would be great if you did this. And there I am making my task list, right? And literally, I think it was about a week or two of this with this, I'm going to say quote guide. And I kind of had to pause and be like, this guide is just going to have me busy all the time. And it was like, I'm exhausted and there's so much more to do. And something in me just knew something's off here. I think I'm allowing, consciously or unconsciously, something to sort of boss me around. And I recognized around that same time, for me, it was a gift, a synchronous gift at the moment, but somehow the law of one, or the raw material, came my way. It's a 5-book series of channeled content from a group consciousness known as, or identifying itself as, Raw. And Carla Ruckert is the channel that the communication came through and was transcribed into these books. It matters not if anyone listening to this feels resonant with those books or not. That matters not. Why I'm bringing this up is because around that same time, I crossed paths with those books. And I read in there about polarization and service to self and service to others. And for me in that moment, it was a synchronous key that helped me recognize that was the issue I was having with what I call now lovingly the taskmaster guide, who was just basically bossing me around. And I was like, I'm happy to do it because I'm so action oriented. But anyway, I recognized, oh, I'm missing something here. I'm not polarizing or tuning or refining to what the book would say is polarization and service to others. But for me, it just means in service to love, or embodying love, or being aligned with love, or resonating from that place of love that comes from within. And so that was a really big defining moment for me in terms of my work. I hadn't yet started doing my intuitive mediumship work publicly or professionally. I was still practicing on my own, and also working with friends to practice, bringing through guidance for them. I wanted to really feel confident and feel like I could trust it before I actually did it professionally. And that was a really defining moment for me, that it helped me recognize I have to actually choose what vibration or frequency I'm going to be connecting and connecting with guidance, and also communicating guidance, and also how I'm going to be responding or reacting to guidance and integrating it or not. And I recognize that it was imperative that I do that from a place of love, that I couldn't go into that sort of half-heartedly and not being discerning. And so after that moment, there were no more taskmaster spirits or guides or anything, but I think anyone that steps into this work as an intuitive or a medium or a channel, there's always like a learning curve to it in the beginning, and different lessons that we get along the way. But that's when I first stumbled onto it, and it just was perfect for the time.
Yeah, that's great. I love that, how you kind of went through that experience of, opening up and then not understanding that process. And it's almost like if you didn't have that experience of the taskmaster, you wouldn't understand the importance of the polarizing in service to others. If you just kind of stumbled onto that without the experiential experience of like the opposite of polarizing in service to others through connecting, or you wouldn't have that experiential lesson. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's true. And I think that just highlights that sometimes we think we have to do this thing perfect. And even, again, we can call one of the phrases that you and I use, even with inner truth seekers, is someone who's open, ready, willing, or inspired to positively contribute to the planetary shift towards love. That's a way of saying that too. And I think that in itself, it helps, it becomes a guiding principle. It's not something we get perfect. We do not get it perfect. We may strive for it. We may inspire to be that or demonstrate that in our life and in our work. But also there's learning along the way. So like with the Taskmaster Guide, that was a lot of learning that I got really quick and recognized really fast. I don't want to do this again. How do I do this differently? And fortunately, that was going on in my own personal process and practice, and not something that I was doing with or for other people. I hadn't started doing that yet. I'm still refining. So yeah, we have a lot of opportunities to learn and grow, and sometimes by making mistakes.
Great. And then, with the Law of One, the channel book series, which is great. And when I met you and you introduced me to those books and understood more of the kind of principles of the polarizing in service to others, it made more sense and has become a guiding principle, in our professional work, in our life, in our marriage, our work. And that's been so transformative. But I think just to really, for anyone who's not read those books, to kind of just to summarize what polarizing in service to others is versus service to self. I want to just give it a preface, and then I want you to kind of take us deeper with it. In terms of being of service to others, it's not something that's unique to the raw Law of One channel books. You can see this throughout life, throughout spiritual traditions like Jesus, Buddha, or different traditions which talk about being of service to others, or sharing love, or being of service, or you can just look at so many different experiences throughout the earth and the experience that we're aware of. And then the opposite of that, we also have so many examples of this in our life experience or history of humanity, which is the opposite, which is being of service to self, which is something that has their own individuation as the priority. You could describe that as something that takes, that manipulates, that's something that wants to suck in all the energy from around it for its own gain. And then you might say that service to others is something that's expansive, it's unconditionally loving, it's open, it wants to give. What would you kind of add to that? Firstly, that might help differentiate what the difference between service to others and service to self is. And then I'm feeling like I may have some stuff that might just come up from what you've shared.
All right. Yeah, great question. I think just you said some things that just struck inspiration in me that it probably is just going to be an expansion on what you've just said. But, somewhere Jesus said something along the lines of, treating other people as you desire to be treated. And to me, that captures the essence of being in service to love. And here's the thing, I just always like to say this because love, we have so many ideas about what love is. And I think more often than not, we think of love as like romantic love. Oh, my partner, my romantic partner for life. And we have these romanticized ideas about what love is. But love is many things. And it's things that we can't even fathom. And so even if I say, okay, I'm recognizing there's an opportunity here to live my life or make decisions or behave and engage in my relationships in service to love, and I desire that. There's something interesting that happens. I don't know about you, Michael, or anyone else listening that has experience with this. Something interesting that happens inside, you just kind of can feel that feels true for you. Even if you don't know what it means, even if you can't, like I still to this day, I can't tell you what love actually is. I can glimpse it and I can sometimes get close to describing it.
It's a British movie around Christmas time.
Love Actually.
Yeah.
It's Love Actually. Okay, that's hilarious. I haven't seen that movie in a while. So, yeah. Basically, like being in service to love, like even as I'm talking about it, I can feel it. I'm just like, yeah, that. And if you were like, what is that? I'm like, I'm not fully sure. Can you tell me? But yeah, I want to be in service to love. The alternate or the contrast to that is being in service to fear. And here's the thing. I say that being in service to fear, I'm like, it's not anything that we judge. Fear is something that is quite often experienced in the human incarnation. It's common. It's, feeling separateness or experiencing the heavy veil or illusion of separateness from God to the human aspect can be very fearful, can be terrifying, quite honestly. And so when we say maybe the opposite or the alternate or the contrast of being in service to love is being in service to fear, that's not meant to say we're not to experience fear or avoid fear or pretend I'm not afraid. I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, yeah, I experience fear quite a bit, quite honestly. So it's more about recognizing that this, we just start somewhere easy. We don't need to overcomplicate it, but just recognizing that my thoughts, the thoughts that I have, the ego mind, the thought stream that goes on, however it does, that my thoughts are either aligned with fear or contraction or absorption or scarcity or conditionality, or my thoughts are aligned with love, expansion, unconditionality. Love is like, I don't need anything from you. Here, let me give you everything, and I don't need anything. Fear is, I don't know if I should give this to you. Well, if I give it to you, then I hope that I'm going to get this in return. So we can work with that or start recognizing that everything we're doing is falling into one of two things. It's not like there aren't gray areas to this. And it's also neither good nor bad. It's just a recognition that I'm either acting or thinking or behaving in ways that are aligned with love. And I can do that consciously or unconsciously. There's plenty of times that I unconsciously align with love. And I'm like, oh, that was nice. That I enjoyed that. Okay, but then we can also consciously and unconsciously behave or think or talk or engage or perform in our lives in ways that are aligned with fear. And so even that, being in service to love or being in service to fear, it's just an opportunity to recognize, even have something to reflect back to us or recognize when we're doing it or not. But I can tell you this, and I talk about this a lot in my intuitive development course. This comes through a lot from Spirit, that if we're not doing one or the other, we're fence riding. And when we ride the fence, we're, first of all, that's tiring. Second of all, it's like it's a little bit haphazard and what I would call reactionary, and unconscious, which again is perfectly fine, because I've lived loads of lifetimes where the whole incarnation's about continuing to be unconscious in the lifetime. But when we're riding the fence, it just means that we're kind of reacting and responding to whatever's happening on a given day, and we're not really putting our intention or imprint into it.
Great. And yeah, I think like what's interesting, and this is a misconception that working with clients and people that I've worked with over the years, one of the common misconceptions about being of service to others is that service to others is all about action rather than it being a vibration. So I just want to talk a little bit for a moment and then see what your views are on it. But like, service to others is a vibration. And if we think about anything in our lives, like, our actions are always a product of our vibration. Even if like, so someone was like angrily towards us or kind of like drove in front of us, if like our kind of heart rate increases and maybe we get a little bit angry or something like that, of like, oh, I could have crashed or something of that nature, that's like a very instant reaction. If we like slowed that down and distilled it out, you would notice that there's a vibration there that felt like someone's done something wrong to me. There's a vibration that I've been infringed upon or something. And then the reaction comes up from that. So of course you can choose how to react and respond. But essentially what this kind of is illustrating is that there's a vibration beforehand. And if in this instant the vibration of the car driver was enlightened, someone could kind of pull in front and then there might not even be a reaction. The vibration might just be complete love for that person, even if they drove in front of them. So what we're distilling out here, if Jesus was on the highway, if you will, like the vibration may be, oh, okay, someone's in a hurry. They must have something important to go and do. I'm okay. Everyone's okay. And there's no kind of reaction or response in that negative potentially seen negative way. So as we talk about being of service to others, sometimes people can feel like, oh, being of service to others, I have to go and do all of these things. And of course, that can be a natural extension of recognizing that vibration. But through my writing and through my work, I always like to refer to tuning into the vibration which is already there as kind of being the first step. And then, as we talk about, and kind of our disclaimer again, everything that we do here, you just take what resonates, leave what doesn't. We'll continue to say this over and over again. Honor your own spiritual sovereignty. Yeah. Just because this is what we found to be true for us and other people have does not mean that it's true for you. So always honor your own spiritual sovereignty. But part of that process of tuning into service to others is just this checking in to see, is that why I came to Earth?
Yes.
Because it's like, it's no point in saying, oh, I want to be service to others. So one of the great exercises that has come through kind of intuitively for me to help people is remember a time, and I just invite everyone here at this moment in time, just remember a time where you were of service to someone, like whether it be you held a door open for someone, or if you cooked dinner for someone, or if you had a conversation with a friend and you supported them through a difficult time, or, perhaps professionally you were helping someone and they had a breakthrough. Tune into that vibration by remembering the act of service, but tune into the vibration that came before the act of service. And that's a way to kind of tune into the vibration in its purer form before the kind of physical reality experience is laid upon top of it. And then when you kind of get tuned into that vibration, when you remember it, that vibration of being of service to someone, ask yourself, is this what I choose? Is this what I prefer? And if not, ask yourself why not? And the other part of the work that we say in terms of generally, the work that we offer and we resonate to people who find that vibration. And again, it doesn't have to be acts of doing, but generally we kind of resonate with people, and our work is designed for people who recognize, yes, I want to be of service to the planetary shift towards love in whatever form that might be, whether it be just being, like a great husband or wife or daughter or son, or, whether it's creating your own content or your own business, or whether when you're working in an organization for someone that your general kind of orientation is to help make the world a more loving place. But the first part of that is that question is to remember it, to tune into it, and then kind of recognize that vibration. Because like for me personally, and I'll just wrap this up, for me personally, when I tune into that, it takes me to like a different place that's not of this earth. It's like, we get so much amnesia, the day to day of life. But if we I remember one thing comes up for me now is that when we went on this tree planting experience, and it was just like there was this pure experience of just planting a tree in the ground, no cameras, no nothing. It's just like you're there having this experience with these trees, and you can feel that act of service that doesn't need anything, doesn't do it for anything, but is just pure like love coming through, expressing itself. And like when I tune into an experience like that, or something of a similar nature, I can just feel myself. It just like feels like the day-to-day kind of preoccupations that I have just seeming insignificant in comparison to that active vibration of that service. And then we may do more episodes on service to others, because this is just such a big topic and it's the heart of all our work.
Yeah.
But when we start tuning into that vibration before the act, we can express ourselves from that place of purity, of service to the infinite one consciousness, or to the earth, or to each other, or whatever it may be. Our actions, our decisions, what we decide to do with our life, how we choose to embody it, on some level they're insignificant. We have our soul blueprint, we'll have the ways that we prefer to do it, and the ways that we might get more excitement, or the way that our life may play out. But the invitation is that first point is just to tune into that vibration, and then ask the simple question, how do I live from it? How do I live from this vibration?
I love that. Because, I always think of it as its own loving intelligence that continues to inform us. How does being in service to others, or being in service to love, find its way and work through you? How does it find its way and work through me? And it's going to be unique yet again to every single one of us. And you and I might be in the same situation and be wondering what's being called forth from me in this or not, and what's being called forth through me in service to others at this exact moment. And you and I both are going to get possibly a different inspiration for what's being invited, and both are correct, both are true. They just have different ways of working their way through individuals. So I think that's another beautiful thing that you've pointed out, is just that it's going to look unique to each person, how that takes shape or form. And again, that it's always there, almost like a guide to help inform us, especially when we show up in places. I know, sometimes before I go into a session, maybe one of the dogs has knocked something off and a glass is broke, and then something spilled, and Michael knows how much messes freak me out, you guys. They trigger me so bad. And so I have to really kind of just recognize I'm dysregulated. And then I have to talk myself off the cliff of like, it's just a spill. It's just glass. It's just nothing. So I have a whole process that happens with messes. But like if that happens right before I go into a session with a client or a student, something I'm very aware of and do all the time. And I'm not concerned about that I'm dysregulated for the moment, because then the next thing I do once I get it cleaned up and realize I've got 5 minutes, I just calmly stop and center, close my eyes, remind myself I'm here in service to love, that I'm about to step into a session. It's in service to love. It's in service to all beings. It's in service to the other person, the client, the student. And then immediately when we place our attention there, we are there. We are that. And I think what you were talking about from a non-dual perspective or a non-dual foundation is recognizing that that being or that vibration or that essence or energy of being in service to others already exists. It's just simply we're placing our attention back towards it and therefore strengthening our own awareness of it. It's already there. It's already strong. We just, again, I'll say, have the opportunity here in our incarnation on planet Earth to recognize that it's there and choose it, or recognize it's there and not choose it, or not recognize it's there and sometimes accidentally choose it and sometimes not choose it. But so I love that. I love that it streams through each of us uniquely. I think the other thing that I just quickly want to say that comes up, and I'd love to hear from you too, how this resonates with you or how you recognize it in your own consciousness. But you and I both know I'm aware of other lifetimes I've had, not nowhere near all of them, but I'm aware of many lifetimes I've had. And I've had lifetimes that I'm aware that I was not choosing to be in service to others or being consciously in service to love. So the other thing is that I recognize for me in this lifetime, for whatever reason, I can't escape it. Not that I would try to, but the desire or the impulse or the yearning or the leaning towards or the seeking, that being in service to love is, I'm aware, is just naturally inherent innately in me in this lifetime. And that when I stumbled across it formally, is what I might say, that I recognized myself in it. And I felt like, oh, that's what that is inside. And so I just got excited to get to have a more strong or powerful or direct way of accessing that and working with it to move through my incarnation with whatever catalysts or opportunities arrive for lessons and growth. But I'm curious to know if you feel that way, if you feel like that's something. I know you mentioned earlier at the beginning of the episode that from a kid you noticed those things, like the 10 pounds that you found. I'm just wondering in your own reflection with your own life how that resonates with you or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think like from when I was a kid, I got a lot of, I would say, enjoyment out of helping my family or cooking meals or making coffees for people or
that.
Doing all these types of things.
Yeah.
You know me, I still love cooking and everything.
Thank you.
And then there's, of course, like a distortion that was also on top of that there was a part of me that recognized that I would have the experience of more love when I did these things for people.
Got it.
So then there's like a trauma distortion on top of that, which I've kind of been aware of. But I think more like, to maybe get back to the question in a minute, what kind of comes through is that it's not about getting it right, like first time. It's not even about getting it right, period, or full stop for the people in the UK who don't know what period is. It's not about getting it completely like correct. What it seems to be to me is that there are a series of decisions and choices that are presented to us at each moment in time, and we get to choose how we want to respond. And if we want it to be binary within the kind of experience and say there was choosing service to others and choosing service to self, whilst of course is like a gradient and it's a spectrum between, it's not black or white. But if we look at everything for this moment in time, we could have the opportunity with every decision that we would make as like an integration practice, if it so resonated to you, you could say, do I want to choose with every decision that I get to make throughout this day? Maybe just start for like 60 minutes to make it easy.
Yeah, that's a good start.
But like, how do I choose to be of service to others with every decision that I make? Because the polarization into service to others is a choice. It's a conscious choice respecting spiritual sovereignty and free will. It's not necessary. It's not mandatory. The reason why we choose, and again, we don't get things perfect. We're not holier than thou.
No.
We're human beings on earth, and we desire and strive to be more and more to service to others in our life, our marriage, our work, and our relationships, and all these types of things. But we don't always get it right every time. You know, there's trauma, there's human, there's life, there's things like this. There's so many different complexities of it. But for this practice, we come back to the choice, because however we respond or react, just like Jesus on the highway, like driving before.
Jesus literally taking the wheel.
Yes, he actually took the wheel.
In this.
Finally. Thank you. So there's always a choice there, even if we don't think that there is. Sometimes we might feel like that we don't have a choice in how we respond or react. But in my experience, there's always an element of choice. Even if it's how we respond to something that we don't have a choice about, there's a choice energetically in terms of how we respond to it. But for the practice of the integration of polarizing into service to others, there's an invitation to use that catalyst to say, I'm going to respond to this from service to others. And then just notice how things transform. Notice how you have a different experience. And to kind of ground this into, like, why is that useful? And we're going to draw upon like the law of one work in terms of the two souls paths, essentially, that when you incarnate into earth density, which is currently third density going into fourth density, and I'm sure we'll go more into that in another experience.
Sounds good.
Another podcast, which is essentially the planetary shift towards love, which is what we're dedicating in a Truth Seekers 2 and our work to. Essentially, when you are a soul or an experience, you have an experience of coming to earth and incarnating, there is an option through the incarnation to choose to be of service to self or service to others. Now, many of us are just unconsciously going about life, sometimes being of service to others, sometimes being of service to self. I can kind of say that was kind of more of my experience when, before my kind of spiritual awakening of like, there was this pull towards things that felt good. And then there would also be this kind of like fear and trauma and be like, well, I need these things for myself as well because of scarcity and lack beliefs. But essentially what we're saying and quoting the law of one, that the two soul path choices are to be of service to others and service to self. And that eventually as you go through the soul's evolution, when you get to sixth density, everything becomes service to others because there's a recognition that everything is one infinite consciousness, and it's impossible to be of service to self at that level of awareness and awakenedness because there's this recognition of the one consciousness of all things. So the practice of this, in our experience, and again, take it or leave it, we've kind of, I would say, integrated this in our own unique way. I wouldn't say that we're following any scripture or text. If you listen to our first episode, you'll know why. So go back and check that one out. But it's about what really feels like that authentic recognition to us through our direct experience when we've chosen, as we go through that exercise we did before, of coming back to remembering a time of being of service to others, there's just this expansion that naturally occurs. And that's why, we both, whilst we were being of service to others in our jobs previously, before we met each other, and our businesses previously, it was why, part of the reason why we took that big leap of faith to close those businesses down and take a step to being like full-time, I would say, in services to people's spiritual awakening, personal development, transformation. So that's kind of why part of what we've done and how it's integrated for us of choosing to be of service to others. I think it brings a great immense amount of joy. It brings fulfillment and relative meaning. It gives us a guiding principle of how we live our lives, how to live our lives. And now where we find ourselves, after we've been in service to others through multidimensional work for a combined of about 25 years or so between us now at this stage, what we've really found ourselves coming into, and as we step into this next chapter, what we're so excited about right now is helping people step into service to others. For those of you who feel that kind of call out there, who resonate with recognizing that planetary shift towards love, we found our kind of incarnation, our own soul blueprint, is excited the most right now from helping people step into service to others.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if I have any questions, but if you have any follow-ups, I think we're kind of coming towards our kind of time. We're trying to keep these around about the 45 minutes or so we don't go off on tangents for hours at a time. We'll see if we stick to that. But do you feel like, to kind of close us out, that you have anything that you would like to summarize, or any practices for people to go home with today, or anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, I think just one thing briefly. The other thing, a lot of our work, we work with people who are not just moving through personal transformation, acceleration, and growth, but people who are stepping into, or who have already stepped into, some sort of professional, a business modality, something where they're wanting to take their soul blueprint and be in service professionally with that. I happen to work with, because of my intuitive development course, I happen to work with conscious channels, intuitive practitioners, multidimensional professionals, and just, again, dedicated inner truth seekers who are desiring to strengthen their own awareness of their own intuition and use it to assist themselves in their own life, and then also to be of service to other people in whatever their business or industry or modality is. And so where that gets applied there, just for any of you who might be in the range of anything you hear me speaking about, the choosing your polarization to be in service to others in that professional work, especially, I'm going to call it intuitives, mediums, healers, therapists, coaches, doctors, channels, massage. There's so many different modalities this can find its way into. That when sometimes people say, sometimes I get really good guidance that I feel like comes through from my clients, or I intuitively really feel something great for my clients. Other times I get something and I'm like, I think that's just my mind coming up with that. Or other times I get things and it feels a little bit negative, and people get confused or have difficulty with discernment about, how do I know if this is real? How do I know if this is helpful? How do I know if this is beneficial? One of the most powerful things anybody can do at the professional level, especially when we're working in service to other people professionally, is to choose that polarization and then dedicate to it. Because when we do that, what we do to our own field, our own essence, our own beingness, our own multidimensionality, what we do is we say, this is who I am. And we're basically embodying it because we put our attention towards it, again, because that being in service to love already exists within us. All we're doing is consciously choosing it, and therefore putting our attention towards it and emphasizing it. So then when I say that, even right now, Michael's watching me, I know intuitively. And when I say I'm here in alignment with being in service to others, my field just exudes it. It emanates it. And then I make it clear when I'm working with somebody, I make it clear to my own consciousness and what I call my spirit team, yet again, another podcast episode down the line. I make it clear, this is who I am. It's what I'm doing. It's what I'm in service to in this session with this client. And therefore, that strengthening of that field of love within me, recognizing it as me, also emphasizing it outside of me, what that does is it becomes the discernment container for anything that's not love at that highest vibration, right? So in other words, if for some reason I'm getting guidance that feels very conditional, like the Taskmaster guide, you have to do this, you have to do that. In order to get more guidance, you have to do this. Well, that's very conditional because I've practiced so much putting my attention towards or embodying, radiating that being in service to love. I therefore can recognize that conditionality quicker. This energy is coming from conditionality. It's not in alignment with that highest vibration of love. That's interesting. Thank you. But that's not the guidance I'm going to be receiving or paying attention to or sharing today. Okay. So that too, for any of you professionals out there, that's the way we shore up and get really refined, purified, clean, crystal clear on who we are, how we're practicing, and what we're connecting with, and what we're actually going to communicate and share in that work in service to our students and clients.
Beautiful. I know how powerful the work that you do with all your students is, so you bring it through so beautifully and gracefully and fantastically, and I learn so much from you, so thank you so much.
Thanks.
And thank you everyone for listening today. If you'd like to check out our website at innertruthseekers.com, you can find a whole bunch of free resources, our one-on-one courses, programs and sessions. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.